Hi, I'm Terry and I'm responsible for single adult ministries and life groups here at North Coast. This week we've been taking a look at the life of a man in the Bible named Joseph through a series we're calling Dream Killers. Now there are a number of guys in the Bible named Joseph. This one we're talking about here was a descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, from whom God had promised to build a nation. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob and his first son through his favorite wife Rachel. Yeah, I know, that's a whole nother can of worms. But since he was the first son by her, Joseph was favored by his father. And his half-brothers resented it, big time, as we'll learn more about in just a minute. The story of Joseph can be found at the end of Genesis, the first book in the Bible. The story is evidently meant to be so meaningful for us that 13 of the 15 chapters in this book are dedicated to telling it. If you're not familiar or would like to gain greater context, it can be found in Genesis chapters 37 through 50. And I think you'll find as you look through it that it plays out as well as any dramatic literature, suspenseful TV, or action-packed movie you'll find today, with a ton of twists and turns. With some dramatic license, it was even made into a Broadway musical. The scripture verse we'll look at today is taken from near the end of Joseph's story. In Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, after all that had happened to Joseph, he was blessed with the presence of mind and forgiveness of heart to say to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Sometimes in life, we're forced to learn that while our dreams don't have to die, they may not play out the way we imagine. They may need to be amended. Jacob's and Joseph's plan for his life were significantly upended by the plans and actions of his jealous and spiteful brothers. On 2 occasions, Joseph told them about dreams he'd dreamed, insinuating that one day he might reign and rule over them, and they resented him all the more for it. Whether acting out of some form of teenage pride or as an actual prophet of God, we're not told at this point in the story. But for his brothers, it was the last straw. They first plotted to throw him into a cistern and leave him for dead, but ultimately sold him into slavery, telling their father that he was devoured by a ferocious animal. But even the brothers' evil work could not derail God's ultimate plan for his chosen family and people. In fact, God frequently overrules people's intentions to accomplish his own purposes, doesn't he? Our sovereign Lord works everything out to its proper end. When we're hurt by the actions or non-actions of others, as believers we can be assured that God feels our pain and can use what is meant for evil instead for good. Other times we need to remain aware and respectful of the fact that when God makes a promise, we can be assured that no actions on the part of mere mortals can ultimately spoil his almighty plan. But you likely know, as I have had to learn, this requires placing our complete trust in him. Whatever may happen in this world, we can trust that God ultimately assures the victory. Joseph's story can be an example and inspiration to us in that he overcame so much and yet cultivated grace, mercy, and ultimately forgiveness in his heart for those who wronged him. Grace is getting something we don't deserve, maybe kindness, forgiveness, or another loving act, often in the midst of our being horrible. Sometimes we'll hear it called unmerited favor. Mercy has been defined as not getting what we do deserve, as in not getting mowed down by your half-brother for having treated him horribly, or death and eternal separation from God as a result of our sinfulness. God extends grace and mercy to us through the provision of his Son, Jesus. And God desires that we exercise that same grace and mercy toward others above any and all other sacrifices, as he calls us to love one another. Think about some of the less than ideal circumstances taking place in your life right now. What does Jesus love and your respect for and trust in his ultimate plan calling you to do? What does love require? What's the most loving thing you can do in the midst of your current circumstances? If not for them, well then for him, as a loving and faithful response for all that he has done for you. Like Joseph, our obedience and faithfulness may just result in God's working to save the lives of many others. How can you remain obedient and trustworthy as Joseph was to the belief and action that after all, God's got the victory? Faith, trust, and obedience. Oh, it's not easy, but just another reason I believe he's placed us to be here for one another. I'll see you out there.